Nicola, welcome to Success on Your Terms. I'm delighted to have you on. I'm very excited. I often find I'm always excited for everybody coming on, but there's so much great conversation we're going to have. I know that for sure. So let's start with an introduction of yourself, what you do, and what success means to you.
Wow. Well, first of all, Natalie, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. So for anyone that doesn't know me, my name is Nicola Rowley, and I help business owners and brands get more visible in the media through strategic storytelling so that they can go on and impact the lives of others. And I think it's something that a lot of PRs actually miss is what can PR do? Well, it can actually help you talk about what it is that you do so that you can reach more people. So success for me, I think it's changed over the years. I think it's an ongoing evolution. I don't think that there's success is this or success is that. But I think for me, right at the beginning of my journey, when I first became an entrepreneur, it was all about, can I pay the bills, pay the mortgage, be there for my little boy? Now we've evolved into, okay, I'm there for my little boy. I want to continue to be. Now let's build the life that means that we get to have incredible experiences. We get to go to incredible places and we're still there for each other, but we're taking it up a notch or two.
Yeah.
So I think that's the big thing for me. And I guess the real success marker is like quite soon. I'm going to be turning the big 50. So there is obviously in my mind now, I'm starting to think, well, okay, I probably won't retire, never work and all the rest of it. But there is an element of, will there be a nice pot of money available at the end so that I could do what I wanted to do? So there is an element of success that will change as we evolve and go on.
I love that. It's lots of shares in there, lots resonates. Have you done a love languages test?
No, but I am a massive empath, a massive empath. And anyone that speaks to me, it's really interesting. Whenever a client comes to me and I sit down with them and we unpick their stories and we go
Yeah.
through, all of the things that they've done. And, if someone comes on and they're quite vulnerable or they've got something happening, they'll be in tears. Like, I'll be in tears. The pair of us will be like feeding off each other because I do very much pick up other people's energy and where they are. I mean, last week I was at a book launch and I was absolutely fine. And it was for a charity which looks after bereaved children. And we're standing there, and then the lady from the charity got up and started talking about the fact how she'd lost her own son. That was it. Like I had tears streaming down my face because I can't but help start putting myself into that person's
Yeah.
position. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so I asked that question because where you said about like experiences and that's me. I'm very much about time and experiences. I think I put my stories the other day. I was like, I cannot bear shopping. I hate it. And one of my clients was like, you don't like shopping, do you? I was like, no, I hate it. I did about 19 years in retail. I could do never looking at another shop all my life. But then I also know my partner Tom, he's a massive on his love language is more around gifts. So it's always this one of we have to understand but one another and again the communication side because we want slightly different things. Again, when we talk about success and what that looks like, we have to align and just make sure we work together on that because I will be of the attitude of don't get me something Christmas. I'd rather just have time with you or I'd rather go and do experiences. But then it's all those things as well. And I work hard and want to work for more money because of the experiences I want from that. It's like what the money will bring and making a bigger difference in the world, etc. So it's interesting to see, again, like you say, the empathy side as well, where that comes from for people. What led you? I really want to tap in with what you do around something that we've had a conversation before, which is very much strategy as well and how you see things. Because I definitely think, well, I know that's what draws us together as well, relationship wise. How did you get into PR? Where did that begin for you, that story?
Well, I actually trained as a journalist. So I started off as a journalist because I've always loved to write.
Right.
So I was always a really, really massive fan of storytelling, writing stories. I was the child at school that I always remember this, like when I was 11 and they're trying to work out what set you should go in and everything else, and you've got to sit
Yeah.
your exams. The English exam, I went in and we're all sat down, turned over the paper, and my heart leapt with joy. Everyone else was groaning around me, but it said write a story on this, and I was just like, yes. And I was always the child that loved writing, so it made sense that I became a journalist, and because I had that love of telling stories, and that's what I
Mm.
always wanted to do. And then while I was at university, I went into broadcasting because I love talking and presenting and all of those kind of things. So I worked for a long time reading the news on local radio station, regional radio stations, ended up at Radio 1 reading the news with Chris Moyles at the weekends, all of those kind of things. But I reached a point, even though I'd worked my way up to entertainment reporter at BBC Three, and it was great. What it's like anything, isn't it? You see things or you hear things and you just think, oh my gosh, that sounds so amazing. So you were on red carpets. And yes, I was, but most of my day was in a darkened room, just myself with no window, no light, just myself and an editor. And
Mm.
I'd write things and all the rest of it. But I just was like, I can't see me here beyond, like, if I get to 40 and I'm still sat in a windowless room
Yeah.
in the depths of TV Centre, like this is not what I kind of think I'm here for.
Mm.
So I started looking into PR and just wondering, you know, could I do it? What would it be
Yeah.
about? And it just felt very exciting and very dynamic and a way for me to be more creative. So I moved across quite easily. And then everyone was like, but you get all this coverage. But I think what it was because I understood what journalists wanted because I'd been one for such a long time. I understood the kind of pressures that they were under, the kind of guests that they were after, how it all fitted together. Whereas I think if someone comes in from just a PR background and they're kind of very focused on, right, well, we want to be able to get this and we want to be able to get that, then it's like it's kind of like you're only seeing it from one side. And first job that I went into, I was like, well, this is a completely different career, so obviously I have to go and sit my CAM diploma in marketing communications because I've got to back up the fact that I've made this career change.
Yeah.
Did all of that, which gave me greater depth and understanding around marketing and how it all fitted together. And then ended up working in UK TV, and I was there for 6 years, and then eventually worked my way back up. Ended up, funnily enough, back at the BBC, and I was working internationally at that point. So I was launching Top Gear in the Middle East, and Top Gear in Africa, and all of these kind of things, and working with the Stig and all of those kind of things, and taking journalists around racetracks. And then I went across to Thorpe Park, and Thorpe Park, I was the head of PR at Thorpe Park, and it was a lot of fun. But there were also a lot of moments where you had to keep certain things that were going on
Mm.
out of the media as well. So I got a really good basis for crisis communications. And I'm a big fan of you're exactly where you're meant to be when you're meant to be there. So I needed to go through all of the things that I went through to build together all of the experience so that when I left Thorpe Park and was like, right, I'm going to be there for my sons, I'm going to be the mum on the school gates, doing the drop-offs and the pickups, I can now launch everything by myself because I know crisis communications. I understand reputational management, but I also understand how to secure coverage in a way that also works for journalists.
Yeah. Incredible. What's out of that history and where you went on your journey, what's been those highlighted moments for you, or moments if you think back of like again success or stuff that you've absolutely loved or felt inspired by? What have those moments been?
I think it was all the traveling that I used to get to do. And
Mm.
this is pre Jay coming along. And I used to love the fact that in my job, I walked in and I was maternity cover for like at UK TV, and I was looking after 3 channels. So I was looking after the Good Food TV channel, Home, and Really. And I walked in and I said, right, what do you want me to do? And they said, well, look, here are all the programs that you've got coming up.
Mm.
These are the priority programs. So you need to work around those. Whatever you want to do, you can just do. And I was like, anything? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, well, hang on a second. You've got a program there coming up where Kelly Rowland's involved. Could I go to Miami if I can get a journalist on board and get like a photo shoot with Kelly in Miami? Absolutely. I mean, I was just like, yes, this is amazing. So there's me, Heat magazine in Miami with Kelly Rowland on like, rooftop in Miami. I mean, you can't make this up. It was just incredible. And then I travel all over the world. Like I went to Malaysia with Atul Kutcher for his series for the Good Food channel. I traveled with James Martin. We did a big press trip where I had 13 journalists with me from all national publications. We went to Italy for the weekend.
Wow.
And there was another weekend where I took 3 journalists with me, and we had like a Sex and the City weekend in New York. It was so much fun. There was a lot of work involved as well. I don't want you to just think I was just traveling all over and having an amazing time. But for me, it was a way to get to see parts of the world,
Mm.
travel, which I absolutely love to do anyway, and be able to, secure incredible media at the same time. And I absolutely loved it. When someone says to me, what do you want to do? How do you want to make this work? And you can come up with a strategy and
Yeah.
say, what about this? That strategically we could do this, 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 and this. And I think this will lead to this. I mean, we also flew Kelly Rowland back over to the UK. And then we had a journalist dinner where we invited all these very high profile journalists along. And she sat, and at the time she just sat and sucked ice cubes for the dinner because she had a photo shoot the next day and she didn't want to go into it bloated. But it was a really interesting time to be able to just think, well, hang on a second, anything is possible. And I guess it's just that way of expansive thinking. So I really loved all of that. But then equally, there've been some incredible moments since I've been running my own business. And I remember the time when I was on stage for what was Be Inspired.
Mm.
And I went on stage, and at the time we'd just come out of lockdown, but we were in a TV studio. We had to do our talk in a TV studio on a stage, but we were still in the TV studio. And it was actually my birthday. So I left as soon as I'd done my talk on stage. I left so I could get back, because my little boy had said to me, you can't have any presents until you get back home.
Aw.
And when I got home, I got a message on my phone telling me that I'd been shortlisted for a huge national PR award for a campaign I've been working on myself. And it was that validation of
Mm.
actually, oh my gosh, there's little me. And then I'm up against, in that category, all of the bigger agencies that I used to hire to work with me when I was at Thorpe Park. And they've got teams of 90 people. And then there's me. And I've managed to do this within 2 years of my business being up and running. And I think things like that really make you stop and realize, actually, I am having an impact and I am being able to make a difference.
Yeah, and that's like I was saying about the making a difference of success. And I love how you say about the art of the possible, because that's always sat with me. You've got a generic growth mindset, but your attitude and how you shared your stories there are all about like, go for it, like, so what, and just try it. And that positivity, where does that come from? Because it's like it's essence you can't give people. But then it's like saying leadership, like, can you, we all leaders as such, like, where does that come from for you? And I guess there's a part in, there is a bit of, is it luck, is it fortune that you've found something that you love as well and grown into that? But where does that come from, of that attitude of like, just kind of go for it, the art of possible, what's next, and having a bigger impact, without, because you don't come across ever like you're scared or you doubt it, you just go for it.
Yeah, I think I've always just known that I had to go for it. There wasn't an opportunity to just stop and not
Mm,
do what I needed to do. And I guess it comes from, childhood. Like a lot of things come
yeah.
from childhood. And there was this one moment when I was 10, we used to go on what was known as the school journey to the Isle of Wight. And one of the teachers really didn't like me. It's mainly because she had a bit of a beef with my mum, but she announced that there was going to be this prize and this competition. And so it was going to be for the best work completed after we came back from the school journey. And the person was going to win this prize. Now, I didn't want the prize, I didn't care about the prize, but I wanted to win. And I was so determined to win. Like in that moment where she announced it, I was like, I'm going to win that. And I went through, and when we got back, I worked really, really hard on everything. And every piece of work that we had to do had to go off and be marked by the head teacher. So the
Wow.
head teacher would give you a mark out of 1 to 5. And you'd always want to be round about the 3 to 4. No one ever really got a 5. You wanted to be round about the 4 mark, because the more 4s that you did, obviously you were getting more scores, and then you were getting higher and you were standing more chance to be able to win this prize. And I got to a point where I'd done so much and I've worked so hard, and unbeknownst to my teacher at the time had the score chart of where it was, and we were about a week out from the final part of the competition. And I'd worked so hard, I was just like, no one could have beaten me. But the score chart was there, and it was myself and one other person I think saw it. And I looked across, and there was one girl, and she'd consistently been getting 4s all the way across, and she was ahead of me. And I was like, I can't believe this. I've worked so hard. And I went home and I said to my mum, I've done everything, and yet it's still not enough. And she looked at me and she went, don't you dare give up. And I was like, what? And she was like, don't you dare. Even if, let's work this out, even if you write 10 poems that get you 2 points, where's that going to get you?
Mm,
And I thought, she's right. So I went away and I just sent in loads of poems, because I love poetry. I'm a massive fan of poetry, writing, anything. So I just sent in all of these pieces of work, and I thought, God, they're an absolute load of rubbish. Like, they're like utterly rubbish. But I thought, at least if I could do 10 to 15 of these, that would get
mm,
me ahead. And they all got 4s. So when the night came and the moment came where she had to announce, bearing in mind she doesn't like me, she had to announce who the winner was, and it was in an envelope. And I don't think she knew, because you could tell by her face how disappointed she was that I'd won. But when my name was read out and I knew that I'd done it, that was everything. It was literally everything. And I think what's happened is that moment has lit a fire and like a fuel inside of me that just never goes out. So if someone says to me, you can't do something,
yeah.
I'm like, oh yes, I can, just watch me. And my husband says the same thing. Like, we went traveling to New Zealand, and we like he said, right, I'm gonna go and do a tandem skydive. And I was like, oh, I've always wanted to do one of those. He was like, you'll never do that in a month of Sundays. And I was like, don't tell me I won't do it. I mean, admittedly, the point where I did jump out of the plane, I just thought, this is the silliest thing you've ever done. Like, seriously, you are so scared. But I still did it. And I won't let anything hold me back from getting that kind of like that end result, because I just think our lives are like, you can make your life whatever you want it to be. You
Yeah.
can create that for yourself, like that expansive kind of whatever it can be. And that really excites me. Like, we could change anything. We really can. You can change the narrative. You can change your story chapter by chapter of your book as you go through life. And there's no reason why you can't do that. So my favorite ever quote is by Audrey Hepburn, and it says, "There's no such word as impossible.
Yeah.
The word itself says I'm possible." And I think it's really important to carry that with you. And I've
Yeah.
got my little 9-year-old, like, whenever I said, "What do we say about impossible?" There's no such word. And he just sits in the back of the car and goes, "I'm possible." And I'm like, "Yes, you are." And it's having that self-belief. When
Yeah.
people say, "Oh, I don't have any self-belief," I'm like, "No, forget that." I'm like, I've got all the self-belief. And if I can help to instill that in others through what
Yeah.
I do, then all the better.
So this is really interesting because this is a conversation that came up last week with a client I was with, and we talked about belief. And I said, I often say almost, I sometimes have a bit like of deluded beliefs, what I call it now. Like my dad said to me once, and my dad's been always, he was very successful in his career, retired at 52, and he just, I love the fact he just, where he talks about success, it's around, I'm happy, I'm content. He goes, I have a nice house, I have a lovely family. It's calm, it's peaceful. I do what I want. I can go where I want on holiday. That's life to me. And I've not had to work since. He goes, I don't have those pressures. So he once turned around and said, I've never met anyone that has as much belief as you. And I was just like, I don't know. I've helped people on working out like what confidence is, how we can break it down. I don't know how to break down belief for people because it is just something I have. It is really weird. It's like I just have that attitude a bit like we were talking earlier of like I just go for it, like that point of I'm possible, why not? What do I have to lose? And it's an interesting concept because I know when it comes to business and for sales and everything with clients, the main reason people don't invest in something or go for it is because they don't believe in the outcome or them achieving it. And it's interesting of where does that belief come from? Because I'm a little bit like I'm lost a bit. I've got to work on it a bit, which I'm happy with. Since I did similar with Be Inspired talk, mine was around leaving a corporate world, taking the risks, financial freedom, and everything. I had to do a lot of work on that because I was like, bloody hell, I was like, what is freedom? Like, it's not just freedom for me; it's financial freedom. What does that look like? And actually, what I loved about that was I love the process of things and a step by step and a journey piece and learning and growing in so many areas of my life. And I realized that from leaving the corporate world to doing my business, it was very kind of do this, get this, do this, get this. And like sometimes that can be a bit boring for me. I want more. And doing that whole again, like understanding around things, the process of creating a talk, speaking with people. I love that whole piece and that journey. And I'm trying to map a lot of that now into how I run my business and do different things this year. Because it just fires me up more in my head as well. But it's really interesting. I'm a bit like where I sat with that at the time. I don't know at the moment what belief means. I think I've got to go on a little bit of a journey to look at it because lots of people, again, they talk about it, but it's like, well, what does that mean? How can we help others have more belief instilled in them to stop them taking it? I guess if I was to kind of go on that now, one of the things that I do know for me is that I work a lot on meaning in life and business. And I don't want a lot, what I don't want as much what I do is I don't want to get to like when I'm older and have regretted things or lived life. And again, that's why I talk success on your terms, meeting others' expectations and not really doing what I want. Because there's an amazing book by Bronnie Ware where she spends time with people in palliative care and they share their regrets when they're dying. And the number one regret is we didn't live a life of true meaning to ourselves. It was always caught up with others. So I guess for me, I live maybe a lot of beliefs around meaning. It's an interesting piece, isn't it?
It really is. And don't get me wrong, as much as I've always been like, right, I'm going to go for this and I'm going to go for that, there
Yeah.
was a point where I was allowing life to happen to me.
Yeah.
And that went on for several years, several years. And to a certain extent, it was while I was in PR.
Mm,
It was okay. It was easy. Was I challenged? Probably not. And as a consequence, that's why I set up my photography business, because
mm,
I needed a creative outlet. So I actually thought when I left Thorpe Park, I actually thought the photography was where I was going to head.
mm.
So I was doing a mix of photography and PR, and I was kind of doing both things. And it was only when Lisa Johnson opened my eyes and just said, hang on a second, what are you doing? And I was just like, yeah, I'm not enjoying the photography, and it's taking me away from my little boy at weekends because I was doing weddings all the time. She was just like, go all in on the PR. This is how
Mm,
you do it. That's the process to take. That's, and sometimes it just takes that one person to give you that, oh, yes, okay.
yeah.
And that belief in yourself all over again, because you do need to have someone that just says to you occasionally, you could do this. Why are you not doing this? And calling you out on it as well, because I think it had got to a point where I was just like, well, yes, I can do this and I can do that. Right. Okay. But I just couldn't see the wood for the trees. And it's really interesting how finally I feel like everything has come full circle. It's come full circle back to storytelling. It's come full circle back. Now I can actually help others, because that was always for me, that was the difficulty I found with PR, because a lot of people think that PR is very kind of like, look at me, and it's
Yeah.
very ego led and everything else. Whereas I really struggled with that. I always thought when I first was looking for jobs in PR that I'd work in charity PR,
Mm,
because I just wanted to make a difference.
mm,
And now, through doing what I'm doing, I am able to make that difference. But it took me a while to actually realize that was how I could do it and be able to help others along the way. So I
mm.
think it does come from sometimes other people just giving you that little nudge and that little reminder, you know what? You really are quite special and you can do this. And that counts for each and every single one of us. We're all
Yeah.
special. We've all got incredible things that we can share, that we can do, that can go on and help other people. We just need to be able to unlock it and give ourselves the opportunity to be able to do that too.
You're right, and loads of that resonates, and that's because I work with Lisa as well, so it's the synergies there as well with that. But I'm getting through that. I was there at the beginning of the year, like I'm doing this. It doesn't fuel me with love and passion. I can do it like exactly the same, but it's not this. And she was like, it's this. And a lot of the work we're doing is now messaging. And it's kind of still come from a bit of like, well, could I do that? And she's like, and it's then you start to, like you say, you start to when you go on that journey piece, and that's where I'm bringing the process side. I'm like, I've got this, I've got that, I've got this, and like so my brain is just firing all cylinders in different ways than before. But I've needed somebody to sometimes see something differently. And even last year, I remember saying to her, I need validation on this. Like I know that's sometimes a wrong thing to ask, but and people will say, well, you don't need validation. Like, I do. I need you to help me validate this point because there's no one else. And I said, I'm used to having teams around me, and you get a bit of that confirmation as well. And I said, I haven't got that on my own, and I need some direction and support with that as well. So it's really interesting. And I think what the piece here is that the environment piece about having incredible people around you. I certainly know running a business, like that's like I always say when people ask like what's some of the keys to success, like that's like a non-negotiable. You've got to be building incredible relationships, and we wouldn't be sitting here right now if it wasn't for, well, one, for Lisa Johnson, but also that point of environment, the people that you see on their journey, and you're drawn to them for their beliefs, their values, the depths in a different way of like service and genuinely helping people, not just I want your money sales. It's nothing, but that's just comes with it. But you invest for different reasons, and that's what I love about what I do now is the building of the relationships, the part of like this that tell me what you do PR. It's like, and then I'm like that. I know, like we've had the conversation, like that's something I want to work on. I'm working a lot of corporate right now, but then it's PR, but it's got to be right. And I've got to be in a state where I'm ready to talk about my journey and storytelling as well. But the element of you doing PR and storytelling, but also your strategy side is a side where I'm like, that ticks my boxes. That's for me.
Yeah, definitely. And I think strategy is so important. And
Yes.
sometimes people just think, like, okay, so I'm going to secure a piece of PR and I'm going to be in a magazine. Right. Well, I've done PR. Okay, that's fine. Next. And it's like, no. So what you need to have is a strategy behind
Yeah.
it all. So where we would just take it for granted now, you need to have a business strategy. You need to have direction. You need to have the mission and the values and understanding where you're going to go with that vision. Where's that going to take you so that
Mm,
you can go on and impact more people? But if you just do a piece of PR, just a singular kind of thing over there, and yes, okay, it might be in a nice magazine or whatever, that's not going to tie in with anything else that you're actually doing. What you need to be doing is looking at your plan for the year,
mm,
what it is you're going to be doing. When are the moments in that year where you want to have more visibility? What are the things that you're working on that you want to have more visibility around? And then you need to try as much as possible to make the PR fit in with that. So the PR
mm,
strategy then ties in. It's like a roller coaster. You need to have peaks and troughs. And at the high points, that's when you're being seen more, but you also need to bring it down. It's not like a constant, I want to be seen all of the time.
mm,
No, like you need to be able to think of it like a roller coaster. So you've got those ups and downs,
mm,
and then it's fed into what you're actually planning with your business. And you're also then being seen in the publications where your ideal clients are at, where
yeah.
your ideal clients are hanging out, so that it's much more strategic. And you're thinking also, you were talking about messaging,
Mm,
it's about getting that messaging 100% so you
mm,
can position yourself in the marketplace as the go-to expert, as the person that does XYZ, so that then people are like, she knows what she's doing.
yeah.
And, you get, as a result, you will end up with more credibility markers that you can
Sure.
use on your website with the media logos and everything else. But you've tied in everything into strategy so that when a potential client comes along and they're looking at your website or they're looking at someone else's website, but you've been featured in Grazia and Glamour magazine and Stylist. Oh, hang on a second. But I read all of those and I love those. I'm going to go with that person. And
Mm,
that's how it should work, rather than just thinking, right, I'm just going to secure one or two pieces and then I'm done with this. PR is very much a strategic, longer term strategy to get that awareness, to build that awareness. It's why there's a whole profession around it. And I think people forget that as well.
mm,
They forget that there is an entire, like there are agencies globally that work on positioning, messaging, like reputational management, making sure that their clients are fully looked after, and how to build them to get them to where they are. You've only got to look at someone like Joe Wicks, and I know that you're into your fitness as well, Natalie. So with Joe Wicks, it's a perfect example of PR positioning
yeah.
at work. So during the lockdown, just before everyone knew it was coming, the announcement was coming, schools were going to close, we all had an inkling. His PR person that was behind the scenes said, why don't we own that?
Yeah.
Let's own this space. I think that's going to really help everyone. You could be seen as a savior for parents. And it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. He already had all the tech in place anyway from doing online classes and everything else. So then everyone just had to join this Zoom link, and there was Joe giving us our 30 minutes worth of exercise for the school kids, savior of parents, and obviously then goes on and is awarded with his honor at the palace.
Mm,
And it is all about that positioning. It's about seeing opportunities, and it's about understanding how it all kind of fits together. But I think it needs to have a more strategic view, as opposed to, oh, I fancy doing that today, or I fancy doing this, or I'd like to be in that magazine next week. It very much has to be thought through, planned, and then executed properly.
yeah. And I think you're right about like the long-term game where people, when they see it going, it's not just that one thing. It's got to be more than that. And as you say there, having people guide you on the where to and where and how to see opportunities. I think a lot of people miss opportunities for sure. And I think people even think the phrase like visibility, they're like, I'm going to just like do all this, like do all podcasts, like, but what with what's next, what's behind that, or at least sometimes say for some things like I want it, and it is just for fun because and that's how I started the podcast. I did it in lockdown as 2020, And a lot of it was just at the time where I was doing corporate, that role I was doing there, I couldn't do the business which I started and that corporate role because that just took over and I had to focus. I was like, what can I do? And it's like, well, I can do a podcast. So I just started doing a podcast and I loved it. And then I've kind of had people saying, oh, you want to monetize it, you want to do this? And I said, the podcast to me is about getting great relationships. And I said, in this moment in time, it's all around that and like leading into my business, people getting to know me more as well. But I said, I also like the creative output. It's where I have fun. It's like my form of good therapy for me. You know, that's what I love about it. I said, so I'm very mindful of, I don't want to lose that. And I guess the point I'm sharing is whatever you're doing, just think about the meaning of what it is though, and the step by step. It doesn't always, not everything has to have an output of money or like a return in that way, but you do have to have a strategy behind things, understand things, or know what it means as well. Sometimes I'll do that with posts. I'll put a post out there and I'll say, there's no next action, or it doesn't, I don't know what the purpose it is, I'm just saying it, you know. It's having that behind it. And I think for PR though, the difference is when it's noisy like it is out there and it feels as well, especially on socials, you have to break through the noise. And therefore that the PR stuff, I definitely know I need that strategy behind that, to be reaching the people in the right way. But also, like, you don't know what you don't know with this stuff, right?
Yeah, it's really important. And I think, like I say, I mean, so many people just think that PR is media relations. So
Mm.
securing media coverage and that's it. Well, if that was it, then I wouldn't have a book with 42,000 words in it called The Power of PR. But you know, that it's a tiny part of it, but it's also
Yeah.
thinking about which publications are going to get you seen
Yeah.
via SEO. So understanding, you know, search engine optimization, which sites or which media outlets have bigger SEO, so that then if they link through to you, you're going to likely to get more people and more eyes on what it is that you do. And my kind of end game, as it were, is how can you, once you've got those eyes on you, is how can you then change other people's lives through what you
Mm.
do? And that's it. It's kind of like, I feel like I link all the parts to kind of together so that people
Yeah.
can then go on and be able to help others. And in sometimes, you know, in some cases it's life changing and life affirming. Like there are massive changes that can happen as a result, but it all has to start with a story and it has to begin with that storytelling, but done
Mhm.
strategically. And that I think is absolutely key to everything.
You mentioned people like Kelly Rowland and some amazing experiences. Who's been, or what's been a kind of, again, story that's been of like the most inspiring one to your one, whether it's on your podcast or something like that, someone sharing something you feel like, wow.
That's a really tough one because a lot of the people that come on to my podcast they're really inspiring. But actually, I think it's my friend Deborah Henderson. So she I remember seeing, well, we used to work together at the BBC, and we used to, like, it's like anything, isn't it, when you move from different places and you go through different things, you stay in touch with what people are up to thanks to Facebook and things like that. And I remember a post of hers and she said, I've been told that I've got stage 4, I think it was like leukemia, and I I'm with my kids and we're in London at the moment, and I've been told that there's not much hope, and that, you know, the likelihood is that I'm going to be, you know, I won't be here in, you know, 12 months, 2 years time. And she chose to fight,
Mm.
and she did everything she possibly could. Like she got herself into situations that I can't actually, like, talking to her about it now, I was just like, this is phenomenal. But I do feel like the universe, when it has a plan for you, that plan will unfold however it's going to unfold. But little nuances will happen along the way. Like she took herself off to a conference, and speaking at that conference was a chap who was leading a revolutionary trial in a new drug,
Mm.
and she'd been told that she needed to have this operation, and if she'd had this operation before she'd gone to that conference, there was nothing that could have happened for her. This chap came off stage, and ordinarily he'd just go and sit at the front. he didn't. For whatever reason, he went and sat at the back, and he ended up sitting right next to her. And he said, "Oh, so are you here just supporting someone?" And she said, "No, I'm here because I actually have this form of cancer, and I'm, I've heard that drug trials are possible. I have no idea how this could even potentially work for me." Anyway, she ends up going on the trial. She ends up doing all of the things that she did. And as a result, what she did was the drug that she ended up taking at the time, it was manufactured in Melbourne, Australia, and which is where she was living at the time. But because she still had her UK passport, she was able to go back and forth and do the trial in the UK, as well as obviously trying to keep her life going in Melbourne. And she actually got the drug introduced for other people in Melbourne. So before, it hadn't been available, and they were like, it's not available, you can't have it.
Mm.
She has then saved hundreds of lives as a result of doing all of that and all of the campaigning that she's done and things like that. And she's an incredible inspiration. And there is one other lady who I have to give a shout out to, who is Mira Naran. I mean, my gosh, Mira she's just the most incredible lady. When she contacted me in 2020, she just said, "No one's listening and I don't know what to do." Her little boy, Dev, sadly passed away after an accident on a smart motorway, or a collision on the smart motorway. And he was only 8. And at the time, Jay was 7, I think it was. So as you can imagine, with me, complete empath coming out, I couldn't even imagine what she's actually been through. But together we've worked strategically, and she's been able to achieve incredible things, incredible things. She works alongside the government, she works alongside highways agency to really affect incredible change. She's changed the highways code. She's got the government to commit to investing £900 million in road safety. And there's a 18-point action plan that came all about smart motorways and everything else, and what needs to happen around them. And that was implemented. All of those points were what Mira went to the government with, and they took notice. But we needed to work strategically so that they would sit up and take notice and start implementing things and start listening to her and all of those kind of things. So the media in that instance, sometimes the media gets a really bad rap in terms of, oh, journalists are only after bad stories and they're only looking for, bad things that have happened. But actually, it can be an incredible force for good. And you've only got to look at what Mira has achieved. And, she went to the palace and, she was awarded her MBE. And that was an incredibly proud moment for me as well, because it was just like, she's finally been listened to.
Yeah.
But getting her to that point from, I'm not being listened to now I am, and, being asked to stand up on stage and inspire people with her story and how she's had to dig really deep in her grief to find hope, that we can have safer drivers on safer roads and
Mm.
everything, and pulling that all together. So yeah, I couldn't just choose one. I'll
Yeah.
go for those two. But they're
Mm.
incredible. Like, I meet so many incredible people, and when they share their stories with me, I just feel so honored to be able to hear that and be able to help them unlock it all and then put it all back together.
Mm.
It's such a privilege.
And it brings real meaning. I know we had an hour together last year, and that's a tiny bit of time, right? But even then I came away and I was like, oh my God, like you again, like, they're seeing things differently, isn't it? And it changes the way you see things completely. And also I think the point was, I think I probably even said this, like, I don't really have a story. I was like, I feel like I don't. Like, I'm just kind of me, and life's been nice and all, it's always worked really well. And it's like, who would want to listen to that? And then that's where you unpick it and then start to see actually how you can inspire people with your own story. And everybody has one.
Oh gosh, completely. Everyone has one. And I think I'd be very, very rich right now if I'd listened to all of the people that said I don't have a story and
Yeah.
like they'd give me like £10. I'd be very, very rich because everyone says I don't have a story. I don't think I do. And a classic example was a lady came to me and she said, "Oh, I don't have a story. I have nothing. Like, it's just this thing." And she was telling me what she did, and it was really impressive. And I was like, right, okay, I'm trying to understand what you're doing. Where are you working right now? And she was like, "Oh, I'm just in the caravan on the driveway of my home." And I was like, right, please tell me you moved into the caravan to do your work because of homeschooling. Oh my gosh, that's exactly why I did it, because it was just too much. Like homeschooling, trying to get my head around doing the business, trying to keep it running and everything else. I needed a little bit of space. And I was like, "That's your story." And she was like, "What?" And I was like, "It is. You're the lady that's making 20K a month from the driveway of her home in a caravan." And it was really interesting because she was just like, "Oh, I don't believe that." And I was just like, "No, seriously, it's really good." And I approached a journalist and I said, "I think this is really good." And she said, "Oh, I like that. Has she got any pictures?" And I said, "No, but I'm going to make her create a sign that says 'Do not disturb mum' working on it, so she can hold it up when the photographer gets there." And she said, "All right, Nicola, yeah, go on and do that." And the photographer turns up, and first thing, because she'd been prepped, she just went, "I've got this sign." And the photographer's eyes, she just said, "I've never seen anything like it." Like his eyes just lit up at the sign. And so she was able to hold it up, lean out of the caravan. And of course, that was the main picture that they used in the double page spread of a really well read national newspaper. And she was just like, "Oh, how does that work?" And I said, "Because you've got to understand that that particular publication loves mums. It loves supporting women that are doing their own thing and going out there in business. And it's about gelling the two together and
Mm.
understanding what the story is behind it, but how it actually fits in with what the media also wants, so
Yeah.
that you can then be able to make it fit together."
Mm. It's
It's
a
like
great idea.
anything, isn't it? It's just you've got to be able to think to a certain extent when it comes to PR, you've got to be able to think like a journalist as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you put that round because I could talk to you for hours, to be fair. And we often, when we get on to calls as well, we do just talk. It's lovely. But that's the point, I want people to reach out to you because you genuinely build relationships with people, you take the time and you care. And also what you do very well is, I guess it's like I used to look at and think, "Oh my God, it's so scary. Like, where do I even start with that?" And like that, like I haven't got a story, and you create lots of excuses and obstacles. But just getting in your world, being in conversation, seeing what you do, getting to know you, it inspires me in ways of, "Oh, okay, I can do this, and this is what it looks like." And how, like doing it the right people is a big thing for me. I like people where we've got very similar values, beliefs, and you always hold to those, which I love. And like the empathy is probably a big thing as well that does that for us, because and again, like how you share that you live and breathe it, which is really important. How can people reach out to you and find out more about working with you?
So the website's always a good opportunity to be able to do that. So it's nicolarowley.com. I'm also on Instagram. You can quite often see me dancing with hashtag PR dog, which is our very cute cockapoo. I want to call him a puppy. He'll always be a puppy to me. He's coming up for 3 actually. So that's at Nicola J Rowley PR. And yeah, just check out. I'm really easy to find
Yeah.
on Facebook, and I've got a free Facebook group called the Communications Community where we do tips about PR, and we also do fun campaigns that have caught my eye and things like that. And but at the same time, we also talk about the things that others are talking about right now. So if there's like a key kind of thing that I can see that's becoming more of a trend or things like that, we'll talk about that. So yeah, those are all the ways that you can connect with me. I mean, I just think that at the end of the day, understanding what your story is,
Mm.
knowing what your story is, even if you don't use it to go into PR, even if you just unlock it all It will give you the clarity and confidence to be able to really show up in your business as the authentic version of yourself. And I think that's the most important thing that we can all do, that we show up as ourselves so that people can understand how we can help them.
Yeah. I love that. It's so important and a great way to end it. Thank you so much for your time. I've loved speaking with you, and there's been some real little golden nuggets in there as well. I love all your sayings as well, like them. I'm possible. I'm like, yes, yes, yes. But it is so important. So look, get involved with your communities because it does make a difference. I remember, I think it was probably a few years ago, I did one of your challenges, and I remember being on a treadmill catching up because I was like, I don't know anything about Nicola, but I want to be involved. I've got to see what she's doing. And that's the point as well, just build relationships with people, isn't it? And see what they're doing. And there's so much value to be taken, even if it's like it's not a now, but like just get understanding what people do will really help your business.
Yeah, definitely. It's all about building relationships. And when it comes to journalists, it's all about building those relationships. And it's, some people say to me, "Oh, how comes when you run events and you do all these events, you manage to get all these journalists to turn up and they're like really high profile journalists?" Because I take the time to build the relationships. I spend and invest in the time to build those relationships. And it's really important. It's
Yeah.
really important.
Nicola, thank you so much.